Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to segment number 9 of the Instant Reaction podcast alongside Rob DeLuca. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We are joined by WPRO-FM's and KevinMcSports and KevinMcSports.com's very own and also Providence beat writer for Providence Friars basketball, Kevin McNamara. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. We really appreciate it. How are things up in your northeast region of New England up there?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the invite, guys. Anyone who likes college basketball and Big East basketball, it's a great time of year for all of us, needless to say. Things are great. Providence has had its best regular season in 40 plus years. So now it's time to see whether that translates to March. It's going to be an interesting ride for sure.
Well, listen, they went 24-4, 14-3 in Big East Conference play, and it was really good to see Providence live back January 8th. They took on St. John's. That was a really good contest in the beginning, of course, and then in the second half, Providence really came and took over. But throughout this entire season, Kevin, it's been a plethora of players, not only one. And we've been talking about year in and year out about Nate Watson and how he's just, he's really the anchor of the team. And he's just the big man. And needless to say, obviously, yes, he literally is the big man, but he is the leader of this team. But there's so many more pieces than just him this year. Looking at Noah Horkler, Al Durham, Jared Bynum, of course, Bynum and Watson were named to the All Big East second team yesterday. Pretty good stuff. Talk about how this team has really come into their own this entire season.
Yeah, well, this is the best team in the Big East, 1 through 7. Okay, obviously no first team All League picks. They won't have the Player of the Year, someone like Colin Gillespie, who's I think is a shoo-in for that. But 1 through 7, when you come off the bench with Ed Croswell, who's been an important piece, and Jared Bynum, who's the Big East Sixth Man of the Year. It's a deep team. And like you said, Joey, different guys on different nights. That's what makes a team. That's what makes it a balanced team. Providence is a difficult team to defend. The opposing coaches, that's what they tell me all the time is, they don't single out a Bynum, a Watson, an AJ Reeves. It's somebody different every night. And when you have to defend all 5 positions, or certainly 4 of the 5 positions at any time, there's not another team in the league that offers that. And I do think that that's Providence's number one attribute.
It's really amazing to see what Providence has done this entire season. Let's take a look also, which we will be doing with every single chat that we do today or that we have today, is of course, the official bracket. And it's going to be Providence taking on either Xavier or Butler. Of course, that first game will start on Wednesday, on March 9th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, Xavier and Butler. And of course, Providence will take on that winner starting at 12 o'clock, which of course we as St. John's alum, me anyway, know about that dreaded 12 o'clock game for as many years as I can remember. For looking at this at the tournament, Kevin, you look and say to yourself, Xavier is really struggling. They've lost 5 straight. They obviously got the last win of the season, but they've really struggled throughout down the stretch, and I believe they lost 7 of their last 9 games or something along those lines. Zach Fremantle has not been the same, but Butler has really been struggling as well, and Providence will be taking on one of those 2 teams. For you, or for even Ed Cooley that you continuously chat with all the time, who do you see maybe would be the team that Providence would want to go up against?
Well, I personally think that Xavier is better than Butler. So if I'm Providence, I'd rather see Butler.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. First of all, a little bit on Xavier. Talent-wise, I think some coaches in the league might tell you that Xavier has the best 1 through 5 talent in the league. They have 2 legit big guys in Nunji and Zach. Paul Scruggs is 38 years old and very tough.
Yeah,
they have some good shooters. Odom. I mean, they have some guys. That said, they came to Providence and they did lose in 3 overtimes.
Yeah,
Providence went out to Cincinnati and won on a last-second 3-pointer. So if it's Xavier at noontime on Thursday, Ed Cooley's not going to have to say anything to his team. I mean, Xavier played Providence tougher than any team besides Villanova in the league. So I expect to see Xavier not only beat Butler, but be a real threat to Providence in that first game because, hey, let's cut through it. I think Xavier needs to beat Providence to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And of course, just last Wednesday, of course, you got a chance to see St. John's take down Xavier. And that was another thing, too, where they needed that game. Both teams needed that game. St. John's, obviously, they're not going to make it, but unless they win the tournament. But Xavier, they're playing themselves out of position because of what we said. They've lost 7 of their last 9. Going back to Providence, though, Kevin, something with me here, or with them, excuse me, you look at someone by the name of Noah Horkler, who's really come into his own, transferred from the South, and he's playing his last year of college basketball up in Providence. What has he meant to this team this entire season?
Well, Noah's an interesting piece because, number one, he's the team's best rebounder, one of the best rebounders in the league. I think he might have led the Big East in rebounding in Big East games or overall games, one of the two.
Yeah.
But on offense, again, back to my original answer, he's often not guarded because are you going to guard the fourth option, the fifth option? So he's getting some wide open looks from the 3-point line right now, and he's greatly improved his 3-point confidence and his shot. So he's like a weapon that is always going to be there because he hunts his shot late. He's very aggressive looking for his 3-point shot. Again, he can hurt you inside because he does rebound very well, but spotting up at the 3-point line, he's a real weapon.
Now, against Villanova, when Providence lost by just 2, Al Durham was not playing. There was some chatter there that, he might be out for an extended period of time. Have you heard anything there with Al Durham? Because, again, you lose by 2 to Villanova without him. And he's a big part. And I believe, I don't know if he's the exact minutes or the atop the minutes leaderboard in the Big East, right, but he's in the top 3. So if he's obviously plays an integral role for Ed Cooley, but if he can get back in come tournament time, not only NCAA tournament time, but also Big East tournament time, how deep can they go and how deep can he take them down the stretch into March?
Yeah, Al Durham, first of all, if he's not the best free throw shooter in the Big East, he's the best clutch free throw shooter in the Big East.
Oh, yeah.
They call him the closer. This is Red Sox country up here, but there's a lot of Yankee fans, too, and they play the Mario Rivera song and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. They need him in the lineup. There's no two ways about it. He will be in the lineup for the noon game at the Big East, and Ed Cooley is basically saying after that, it's a game-to-game, game-time decision situation. So he has a sports hernia that is not going to be operated on maybe after the season, but it's not to the degree where it needs to be operated on already, or else they would have done it a month ago because he's been playing with it for quite a while. So rest is important. Treatment in between games is important. Can he play 3 games in a row, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? I'm not sure he can, guys. And, that's certainly a concern. I think the focus is to have him play on Thursday, see how he makes out, and then maybe you have to look out to the following week and make sure he's ready for the first NCAA tournament game, which maybe is more important than the Big East semifinals to a team like Providence.
Yeah, 100%. DeLuca, take it away.
Yeah, Kevin, you make a great point there. Speaking of that, Providence might just be looking towards the NCAA tournament since they're already going to be there. I want to pull up the preseason poll that obviously happened during the Big East play. Let's just take a look at it here.
I got you. Here we go.
Yeah, and as you see, Providence was tabbed as 7th place, playing on Wednesday against what would have been Georgetown. Obviously, this poll did not even remotely shake up the way it turned out to be. So
look at Marquette too.
Yeah, Creighton finishing 3rd, and so it's just absolutely a crazy year in the Big East. What did Providence do this season where it's like everyone was they were written off early, 7th place finish, playing on maybe win a game in the Big East tournament because you're playing the 10 seed.
Yeah.
What did they do to come together as a team to just find this miraculous run, top 10 in the AP polls, and win the Big East tournament for the first time in school history?
Yeah, Rob, good question. I think the key is that we all, media, and certainly the Big East coaches, and by the way, I've been telling the Big East people this for years, and they just don't want to, let go of control. the coaches shouldn't vote. I mean, it puts the coaches in a real spot, and the coaches look bad. Well, how many times have we heard throughout the season what Providence was picked 7th? Well, that's by the 11 coaches. I mean, they did the picking. It's not the media. So many fans think, well, the media is way off. We didn't vote. And would I have picked Providence 7th? No, I probably would have had them 5th. I thought Butler was overrated from the start of the season. I didn't think that made much sense. But I certainly didn't have Marquette in the top 5 as well. I think they're maybe a bigger surprise than Providence just because they're so young. But, college basketball and college basketball coaches and media need to have a different perspective on some of these teams going forward because of the transfer portal. Providence hit it out of the park with the transfer portal with Al Durham and Justin Minaya. Yeah. Justin Minaya is an unbelievably important piece for the Friars. I don't know if we've mentioned him yet so far. I think he's the best wing defender in the league. He didn't win the Defensive Player of the Year in the Big East. They went for a big guy, Kalkbrenner, instead. But Justin Minaya is an important piece. Justin Minaya and Al Durham and Noah Horkler all came to Providence with an awful lot of experience, and none had played in the NCAA tournament. And that was their goal, and that was this team's goal. I don't think anyone at Providence thought that they could be a top 10 team in the country. I mean, there's no way. Don't listen to anybody on the team who says that they could, because it's not true. But going forward with the transfer portal going to be important for every team in the Big East, every team nationally going forward. If you bring in a team that is filled with 22, 23, and 24-year-old guys, you have to take them seriously, especially if they've had success at other stops. And Al Durham was a 2-time team captain at Indiana. I mean, he's played in big-time games. Justin Minaya was a 4-year starter at South Carolina. I mean, Those are big-time experience games. And I think we didn't appreciate, certainly Big East coaches didn't appreciate the impact of those two guys on Providence's team.
And keep in mind also for our New York posse around here, Justin Minaya, his father, former New York Mets general manager Omar Minaya. Just a little quick little tidbit there for some salty Mets fans out there.
Almost went to Seton Hall out of high school. Talk about putting him on the Pirates team the last 4 years. Would be a really valuable player.
Yeah, there's no doubt. DeLuca, do you have another one?
Yeah, so just going forward here, obviously number 1 seed and waiting for the noon game Thursday, Xavier Butler. Is there maybe an opponent that you think between the two of them that gives Providence a tougher time as opposed to one versus the other? Like what do you see could be a more difficult challenge for them going through this Big East tournament?
Yeah, certainly Xavier. No question. As I said before, they had 2 really tough games with Xavier. I think Xavier, talent-wise, is a top 4 team in the league. I really do. They've been sliding. They're going to come in desperate. And, hey, the number 1 seed lost last year. If you remember, Villanova got upset by Georgetown. And I think I did the research. Sorry, Friar fans. I do research, all over the map. In the last 20 years, the number 1 seed, that Thursday noon game, how many times do you think that number 1 seed has lost guys in the last 20 years?
Well, okay. All right.
Here's the hint. It happens.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's tough. I don't mean to interrupt you, Kevin, but as a former St. John student who got to cover the men's basketball team for 4 years and still does it freelance and has seen so many 12 o'clock games and has gotten up early to maybe see St. John's might take down Nova or Marquette or whoever it may be. It's something we don't even want to talk about.
Well, maybe St. John's didn't do it, but it's happened 6 times in 20 years, which I think that's a lot. I mean, the number 1 seed is usually a top 10, 15 team in the country. Yeah. And it's usually Villanova, actually, in the last 11 years. So it actually happened before the league reconstituted several times in a row. So it can happen. And if you tell me that Xavier is a strong candidate to upset Providence, I would tend to agree with that. I think that's probably, if I'm Vegas, that's probably a 3 or 4 point game. So understandable.
Wow.
That's the Big East in March, though. That's the beautiful thing about trying to make the odds here is the Big East, one of the most unpredictable conferences in college basketball.
And tight games, so many tight games.
Kevin, something else for you, just to kind of shy away from Providence a little bit. You look at what you were discussing earlier about the preseason poll and the coaches, voting for these programs. And I just want to pull this back up here, and I want to look at the number 9 ranked team and the number 11 ranked team. And those two teams, regardless of record, most notably with DePaul. DePaul is a 500 team right now. They just, I believe, a few moments ago, I guess I don't know if it was announced by them or somebody else, but they got a 4-star recruit for next year. So they are slowly building things up. And what former Oregon assistant coach and Tony Stubblefield has done with this program has completely made waves within the Big East and really puts them out, puts them on a lookout for years to come, especially when teams are getting older around the Big East. And, DePaul's trying to make some waves, trying to really find their footing within this conference, because since they've joined, it really hasn't been anything worthwhile.
Well, it all comes down to coaching and recruiting. There's no question. Yeah. Has there been any year that you guys recall where DePaul had an awful lot of talent?
No.
And guess what? I think the transfer portal and Tony Stubblefield and his staff are made for each other.
Yeah.
Chicago. We've always said for years and years, DePaul is a sleeping giant because it's in Chicago. Well, guess what? Illinois is in Chicago, and Ohio State's in Chicago, and all the Big Ten are in Chicago. That said, DePaul is in Chicago, and they're going to get some players to come back home after experiencing success or failure at Kansas and at Ohio State and at Illinois and whatnot. Yeah. And Javon Freeman Liberty is the first great example. Be great if he comes back to DePaul. It looks like he's going to bolt. No one. I'll put it this way. DePaul did play Providence twice, and Providence killed them out in Chicago. What happened in Providence? Overtime. Mm-hmm. Overtime. Yeah. No one wants to play DePaul. They have some real talent, and Freeman Liberty is a guy who can go for 30 points. And, similar to Champagne at St. John's, he gets an awful lot of accolades. Understandably, I think Freeman Liberty is a more explosive scorer than Champagne, and you don't want to get him, especially in one of those Big East tournament games where maybe there's not a lot of fans. People are knocking around a little bit on Wednesday night. They face. Help me out. Who do they face?
DePaul faces St. John's on Wednesday night.
I mean, you would assume a lot of St. John's fans are there, but it's a Wednesday night. It's a tricky game, and again, Freeman Liberty. He could go for as many as he can get. It'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
Yeah, and keep in mind also he leads the conference in points per game with 22, which is really unbelievable as well. Kevin, another question for you, a couple more before we let you go. Something else, too, after that DePaul game, I remember, I don't know if I was talking to Rob about it or if I was talking to a few other folks about it, and you hear some critics say, DePaul took Providence to overtime. Is Providence an overrated top 10 AP poll team? Do you agree or disagree?
Well, all season long, the mantra up here is Providence is the luckiest team in the country because they win too many close games. I'm really not quite sure what that means. All I know is they win basically all of the close games. They were 10-2 in games decided by 5 points or less. Now, no question, that is a criticism, legit criticism of Providence that they play too many close games. You're pushing your luck. Averages says you're not supposed to be 10 out of 12 in those close games. It should be 50-50.
Right.
Okay. Well, I don't care what averages or analytics say. If you look at the 12 games and you've won 10, what does that tell you? They're very good in close games. That means they make free throws and they don't turn the ball over down the stretch. And that's what wins close games. Providence has those two attributes that have been proven over and over. I expect them to be in close games. I do not expect them to blitz teams in the Big East tournament. That's not what they do. But in the last 4 or 5 minutes, I expect Providence to make free throws and not turn the ball over and probably win.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. Again, you bring up the clutch moments, how this team has really come into their own. Texas Tech, they took down. They took down, I believe, Wisconsin out there as well. And that's really when we started to notice what Ed Cooley was beginning to, or what he had in there already in the pot. But now it was just stirring it up and ready to go. And then all of a sudden, ready to be served. And that's exactly where this team is right now, heading into the Big East tournament. DeLuca, do you want to finish up for us here?
Absolutely. So, yeah, Kevin, I think you hit that last segment spot on, dead on. Providence was in a lot of close games. They won those close games. And for me, talking about DePaul, I thought we saw a lot of the same thing, but unfortunately they were on the losing side.
Yes.
They were like I was saying it throughout the season. They're probably the best 10th place team I've ever seen, because the amount of games they were just in all season long and just couldn't get that finish there. That's why I think St. John's has a real problem for them on Wednesday night. But let's obviously we're here talking about Providence. Let's just, while we got you for a couple more minutes or so, let's just ask what you think. What is Providence's end of season looking like? How's the Big East tournament going to fare? And more importantly, how is the big dance going to fare?
Well, I think Providence has to get by that very first game. Again, as we've talked about, I see it as Xavier. I see Xavier as desperate. I see Xavier as a good matchup against Providence, as we've seen so far this year in two really, really, really close games. If Providence gets by that game, I like their chances in the second game. It'll be Creighton or Marquette. Marquette is a very bad matchup for Providence because they're very athletic. Super athletic teams give Providence trouble defensively. So Providence would want to face Creighton. They only faced Creighton once this year, and they didn't have an awful lot of trouble with them. The championship game, I'd love to see Connecticut play Villanova in that semifinal. That would really bring Connecticut and their fans back. That's the game I want to see in the Big East tournament. And then, flip a coin. Providence and Providence's fans, if they hate one team, it's Connecticut. A Providence, Connecticut, New England final, I think I'd probably sign up for that more than Providence, Villanova. Although Providence, Villanova, that Providence would love a chance at Villanova for a third time. They lost twice. Very close games, very good games. But, guys, Ed Cooley has had a great run at Providence, 11 years. He has one big black mark on his resume. He has one NCAA tournament win, one in 10 years. This is year 11. This is the best team he's had. Not the most talented. They had a team a couple of years ago with Chris Dunn and Ben Bentel that was more talented in my eyes. But this is the best team, TEAM, that he's had. They need to go to the NCAA tournament and win some games. One game, two games would be unbelievable for a program that has won one NCAA tournament game in the last 25 years. One. So in my eyes, the Big East tournament is great, fine, awesome. I think it's about the NCAA tournament for this program and this team, and I think they are equipped to be a Sweet 16 team. So we'll see what happens.
Kevin, I love how you said you spelt out TEAM. Something else, too. One last thing, we're going to leave it off here. Nate Watson is the number 13 ranked points per game scorer in the Big East. There is no one that is above him. And it also just shows how this team has come together and every single soul is contributing. You brought up Croswell. You brought up, of course, the sixth man. You brought up so many different players that will make this Big East conference really, just be on the lookout during the tournament. And, of course, the whole country is on watch to see what this Providence Friars team can do, because you said they might not have that much talent, but they have such a good team bond, and they can just all come together at the last second. Really good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin McNamara. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on here today, and I'll definitely come and introduce myself to you once more on Wednesday when I see you at the Garden.
Great. Looking forward to getting to the Garden again and actually seeing fans there. I've been 2 years in a row. I was one of the few people who went last year. It was a quick stay because Providence got knocked out by DePaul right out of the chute.
Yes.
And I was on the scene on Wednesday night and Thursday when the world blew up 2 years ago. So really looking forward to getting back in the Garden with big crowds.
You and I both. That was definitely something that I can tell you and I will never forget being there for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin McNamara, we will see you all for the next segment of the Instant Reaction.